All right, welcome back to Everyday Elevations, the podcast where we turn ordinary moments into extraordinary outcomes. So today we have my good friend Brian here, and I'm really excited for this interview because it has been in the works for a good 2 to 3 months now, give or take. And he just has an amazing story. He's somebody who I met at the Running Man Festival, which is a pivotal moment in my life recently, and just very, very excited to get him on here and talk to him and let him tell his story and go from there. So with further ado, Brian, tell me your story, man.
Hey, how's it going, everybody? And Jason, I really appreciate you having me on. And yeah, he's right. It's been like 2 or 3 months in the making of this conversation. So I'm really happy to dive in. The best place I could get started is I was born in Overland Park, Kansas. Technically, I was born in Missouri because the hospital's chains out there, right outside of the Kansas City limits. But I grew up in Overland Park, Kansas, which is a rather large town in Kansas. It's not like what most people would think when I left Kansas and I would tell them I'm from Kansas, because most people are like, oh, you're probably from a town where there's 1,000 people or less. And that's definitely the case in like 90% of everywhere else in Kansas. But I just so happen to be from what I would call the Denver of Kansas, because Johnson County is one of the largest counties in the United States alone. So, for example, I went to high school with around 3,000 kids.
Wow, that's 3 times the amount I had.
Right. I mean, I graduated with like 708 students. So it's like that alone, they had to like speed round the, the names of the graduation. So it was a lot to deal with, in the sense where I didn't know anything else different my whole life of anything smaller. I grew up with just tons of kids in my neighborhood. Both my parents are still together to this day. So like the values around everyone that we were living around were pretty wholesome. Like I rode my bike to my elementary school every day, and, took the bus to middle school. I took the bus to high school until I drove, and everything was really like safe. Like there really was only a few times that we ever heard of like incidences of like, I don't know, some peeping Tom or like a guy in a trench coat exposing himself in the neighborhood, which you just hear about. And like, it definitely like was something that was around people I knew, but there wasn't like examples I've seen in my later years in life of like what a really rundown area, a more Section 8 type of housing and stuff. Like we just didn't have any of that in Overland Park. It was just all families or older couples, that had grown up in that neighborhood and things like that. So my childhood was very bright. I rode my bike a lot. I played with all the kids in my neighborhood. Seasons that would go by, we would play sports. We would play hide and seek. We would, go on our skateboards and bicycles and to each other's houses to play games. And, there weren't cell phones back then. There was just house phones. So you either called or knocked on the door.
This is important. Did you ever have and this is dating myself here, did you ever have little rotary phones on there?
Yeah. So our basement was a rotary phone. And then we were like fancy enough to go from like having the very long 3-foot tether cord in the kitchen to having like eventually, by the time I think I was like a junior or senior in high school, that we got like a cordless phone, because our office phone had like the answering machine that you could press 1, 2, 3, or 4 for like my parents, my brother, my sister, or myself to like leave messages, So that's what we had for forever until I was 15, almost 16 when I got my first cell phone. And it was just a flip phone, no texting, just calling. Because back then you had to pay for every text. Like it was like 10 or like 20 cents, depending on, your company. And so I had friends that would get like grounded for like over texting because they're like, oh, you ran up my phone bill, the parents or whatever. And so my dad just didn't have it. He was just like, yeah, that cost money like per thing. So like I'm not going to do that. But shout out to him because back then he was saving himself a lot of money to then, I think a year or so later, they came out with the unlimited talk, text, and free nights and weekends. And he was like, I'm all about it. It's a deal. And so on the weekends, we could just go bananas. But my dad would like restrict, like, you have 300 text messages in the week. And I'm like, that's so many messages. So
it is a lot.
So it's just one of those things where it's like, my buddy Dalton would like literally just drain texts, like just beep, 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 all day. And so I was like, dude, are you texting like 9 girls? Like, what the heck is wrong with you? But, it's just high school, I get it. Like, just playing around. But, yeah, I mean, all in all, things were good in Overland Park. It's like I worked all throughout high school. I always had a job from the time that I was like 15 and on, just because I was a lifeguard. So I worked for the city for a little bit. I worked at a couple of restaurants. So there was a place called Wheat State Pizza because Kansas is the wheat state. So they made like whole wheat pizza dough and like other confectionaries that were delicious. And then I worked at a place called Victor's Pizza that was like a Chicago style pizzeria. So deep dish, other, pan style, hand tossed pizza, and very, very good because Chicago authenticity mixed with the Kansas City vibe was perfect because the owners were brothers that all grew up in Illinois. So like they're from the Chicago area. They know the source of where to get good snappy hot dogs and all the relish and accoutrement for Chicago dogs. And then they could also take care of the pizza. So they were doing deep dish and, like I said, hand toss stuff. So the styles across the board were perfect. And we delivered too. So like in high school, I was making, I think like 20 something bucks an hour, just being a delivery driver. So it was awesome because like, dude, no rent, no bills, you're just in high school stacking up and just spending it, however, yeah. I was going to say however you please, but yeah, recklessly for sure. Just because you're just a kid.
I'm saying, let's be real. How many of us were responsible when we were 17 years old with money?
Yeah, there were times where I definitely learned how to save because all my iPods I bought all my iPods with like Christmas money and birthday money and money I worked for. And I remember before like social media on like, Polaroid cameras or like the disposable cameras. I have like a couple pictures of me like turning like a wad of 20s into like a 64 gigabyte iPod, because it's like, to me, that was like the pinnacle of having something besides a cell phone because they didn't exist in one.
Yeah.
You didn't have music like that on your phone. If you did, it was a terrible MP3, like, what is that? A ringtone? Oh, it's terrible.
Oh, I definitely had those.
I did too. Yeah, I remember for Christmas, I got a couple ringtones. My parents like bought them from Sprint, and so that was cool to like be able to be in school with like your phone and your iPod because that was before there was just the
just the
apps with iPhone.
Everything.
Yeah, or even Android, that comes with Spotify or whatever you can download. So crazy to think about. I remember my buddy Jordan told me in I think middle school or freshman year, and he's like, yeah, there's gonna be a touch screen iPod and there'll be a phone, and I'm like, you're crazy.
Eventually we'll have chips in our arms.
Yeah, I know, right? Exactly. But yeah, I mean, growing up in Kansas City was a great thing because it's a great place to raise a family. I've got great parents, great siblings. Everybody fights with their brother and sister and their parents. I think that's growing up. That's just a thing. But at the end of the day, now that we're all much older, much more wise, etc., we've always loved each other. We always will. And I think that's what's great about my family is that through all my trials and tribulations, they've always supported me. And even though it would pain them sometimes, they always still pulled through with full support. And, shout out to my parents and shout out to my siblings for just being the good, strong humans they are with great backbone. And, that's all I can ask for.
Yeah. I mean, it's amazing because a lot of families eventually just get so tired of the same thing from someone, whether dealing with addiction, other things, they're just eventually they kind of cut ties. So it's nice that your family always stood up and supported you. So that part's amazing. I think that's pretty cool because not everyone can say they had that.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, we went through the rocks, we went through the water, we went through the storms, but at the end of the day, they always found a way, even when they would lecture me or, gripe about something, which they had all the right in the world too, because the stories we'll get into in a second will make sense of just why it's hard to support that kind of behavior and that kind of lifestyle, because you're not really prepared for it ever. And so I understand where they came from, but at the end of the day, they still were just so rock solid in the sense where they helped me figure it out, and they helped me figure out what I needed to figure out to move forward in my life. And so I'm very thankful for their help.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to just hear more about the story here.
For sure. Because like I said, growing up, normal high school, middle school, elementary, even though I'm going backwards there, it's there were certain things that happened that I think spiraled into why I partied so much in my later years. Because when I was a kid, there was definitely some sexual abuse from kids in the neighborhood, kids my age, and aggressive, just aggressive behavior. And there was a group of kids that definitely got a hold of things like cigarettes and porn and other nefarious items really early in life that I think molded a part of my childhood that as I got older, I would run away from those memories. And then I would also be dropping into these current party hardcore moments that I just wanted to seep into because, feeling the rush of those drugs and the alcohol were much more enticing than being hung up on your past and things like that. So I feel from the time I was about 19 is when things started to get quote unquote worse, because I was out of the house, I was out of the state, because I moved from Kansas City to Minneapolis to go to college.
Okay.
because all of my friends were going to the local universities or renting apartments and getting jobs. And I just didn't really want to settle into more Kansas City stuff. I wanted to move on with like a new set of wings and kind of fly towards a new life.
Yeah, I mean, like most kids going to college, the reason why they leave, they want to see what else is out there.
Exactly. And so in October of 2009, I had met a guy who was DJing at a party I was at. And he was like, yeah, I'm going to school for audio engineering. And I was like, that's so, there's school for like that kind of music, like wicked, like DJ, you know? He's like, yeah, but it's like, I'm learning how to like make music. Like I'm taking classes on the equipment that they use in a real recording studio. And then in my spare time, I'm making music and I'm showing people how to, and I'm recording people and I'm producing music. And I'm like, that is so cool. Sign me up. And so he gave me the information of the college that he was going to, called the Institute for Production and Recording of Minneapolis, or IPR for short. I must have called them dozens of times throughout, a 6-month period, because I was just so enticed in like what they were offering. And it was like this cool vibe of like, it's a school that has a recording studio in it and musicians, and like the professors are people who work in the industry. And like, I was just sold. And so I convinced my parents to allow me to move out to Minneapolis and pursue this program that I was going to study music entertainment business and like live stage production, for like live music, theater, all the above. And I was there for like a year and a half in the program. It was great. I learned a lot. Learned a lot about music business, went to dozens upon dozens and shows and festivals and all of the alike, because that's kind of what's paired in with the scene. You're hanging out with musicians and DJs and festival goers and concert goers. So of course you're all just going to interact in the same things.
Makes sense.
And so, with that, it was like always heavy partying, drug use, alcohol, you name it. So it's like, not that my studies were like slipping that hard, but I was realizing that this program was something that was like, you could be either all involved with like the school's activities and like their recording studio. And as a business student, I couldn't use their recording studio. So I kind of thought that was pretty whack, as well as like very limiting, because I had a lot of business connections I wanted to bring into the studios, but they never let those two cross paths. So like I was more on the street or like other concerts and stuff on the outside of the school walls, networking, realizing, I could just spend my time doing this as opposed to going to a school that's for music. Because like I was thinking about it, I was like, well, anybody who's like in the music business that's deep in it didn't go to school for music business. They just kind of fell into the right spot with the right people and learned how to become a tour manager, a producer, things like that.
Yeah.
So I just kind of started doing that. I just started hanging out at recording studios, bars that were venues for concerts. And my only friends were DJs, sound guys, lights, musicians, and again, people who are going to shows all the time.
Yeah.
So that's when, like, I was already about 21 by then, so I could purchase liquor legally. So it wasn't like anymore, like that switch had already gone off where it was like, oh, great. Like I can just show my ID, buy booze. It's this new world of I'm 21 and I know what it's like to buy alcohol now. So that just was like something you just felt over and over and over again as a 21 to 23-year-old, where you're just like, dude, I live at bars. I go into the liquor store 3 times a day. It's just party, 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 party. And so I didn't even ever realize it as like a negative thing because I was having so much fun. And it's to this day, I don't regret any of my, like, I don't think I had a wasted youth. I think that it's kind of great to have come out it on the other side by 29. And now at 32, I'm able to like do what we'll get into that in a little bit, but it's like, I don't regret it. I don't regret any of the partying. I definitely regret the time, sometimes it's just like, oh, well, I could have been doing this when I was 20, whatever, but you just have that like battle of just, it's whatever.
Hey, everybody. I want to talk to you about something that's changed my fitness routine for the better. That's Pactera Athletics. Finding the right compression shorts shouldn't be a hassle. And that's why I love Pactera Athletics. They made it simple and straightforward. But here's the thing. Pactera doesn't compromise on quality. I've tried tons of shorts, but they just feel different. They last, they're made with top-notch fabrics, and they feel great no matter your workout. Now, I'm a thick guy with thick thighs, so it's very hard for me to find compression shorts that work. And these ones, they let me breathe and still succeed in my workouts. So whether I'm hitting the gym or exploring outdoors, these compression shorts and leggings deliver an unparalleled comfort and support. Are you ready to upgrade your workout? Head to PacteraAthletics.com and use my special code EverydayElevations10 for a discount.
Yeah, and it makes sense. I think with that, there's no point in regretting things that happen because I'm a firm believer that everything happens for a reason. You're at certain points in your life because that's where you're supposed to be. It's where you're at right now because you're where you're supposed to be and you're going to get to somewhere even cooler. So I think that's something that just helped to shape you and kind of create your story. If anything, help you forge yourself even more.
Exactly, because what had happened is the casual drinking and drug use turned into weekly and daily use, where I think by the time I was like 23 or 24, I was drinking like every day, just whether it was like at the end of the day or not, I was definitely drinking like every day. All the time. It just felt like this cool thing to do. It was like the new cigarette or something, it's like, oh, everybody smokes, everybody, so everybody's drinking all the time. Oh, well, Johnny and Billy are drinking at 7 a.m. So like, I want to have fun too. And so I was having so many nights where I was like sleeping on someone else's couch or the floor or, inside of the back of my car or something where, you're just waking up in the morning and kind of stumbling around just like everyone else. So if there's alcohol left over in the morning, people were mostly just drinking that too to chase the hair of the dog. So there was this very perpetual thing that happened while I was in Minneapolis where I just was kind of drinking and doing drugs with people all the time. I fell into that crowd of people where the norm was just drinking, doing cocaine, drinking, smoking marijuana, drinking, doing cocaine, maybe ordering pizza or Chinese or pho or something, it's maybe some nutrition supplement somehow, some way of some sort of sustenance that's going to get you through something. But like, it was never focused. It was never focused on. It was like, if I'm full, great. It's like,
you're more focused on the good time.
Yeah, absolutely. Everyone just wants to, you don't even think about it because bad tasting good food or whatever it is, it's just, you're just always like, you're never in the mood for, a grilled Caesar salad when you're wasted.
It's fair.
Nobody wants like seltzer water and a ribeye when they're, hammered deep on hard liquor.
I'm sure you haven't seen me on hard liquor.
Yeah, no, for sure, Ron Swanson. But it's just like, you know what I mean? It's just cheap thrills. You're just not really going to want to go the extra mile to make yourself feel good.
Oh, yeah.
So it just was this thing of just like my 20s were just kind of a blur shot of that. I think at one point my folks had just accepted that I was kind of like living in Minnesota and then living in Colorado and kind of just, not really doing much. Because I moved to Colorado in 2013 and it kind of just still continued. Because right before I moved, I got my first DUI. And it was just kind of a slap on the wrist to the Minneapolis courts because they were like, well, you say you're going to move to Colorado and change your life, so bye. Like, we don't really want to deal with any of that, so see ya. And so they sent me on my way, and I moved to Colorado in 2013 to move in with a girl at the time. I was in a relationship with somebody from Minnesota that had moved to Colorado. I wanted a change of pace. She gave me the opportunity to move out to Colorado. And, we're friends now. We're good now. But we definitely had a mixture of a good and a very toxic relationship because we were both just involved with our own versions, me way more than her by a long shot, of like not being able to control it, doing too much, not knowing the balance between moderation and not holding jobs down, that sort of thing. Like, she was still able to have a good time, but she had a great job, security. She could hold herself together,
She knew it was time to cut back.
100%, as well as like, I didn't ever agree with the way that she tried to bring up my addictions or some of the ways that she ever treated me in certain things. But you just have to respect that you're dealing with another addict. So like, in retrospect, who's really mad at anybody? Nobody, because that's the past. I understand who she was dealing with was kind of a monster. And so, it just is what it is. So we just weren't really working out. But I'm glad that we respectfully have a friendly relationship now. It's good that that's in the past and that's that. But that was my first serious relationship. So like, when I got out of that relationship in 2017 and I moved into a house in Morrison, I was like kind of free in this weird way where it was like, I didn't know that. I didn't really understand that I was like that tied or locked into, when you're living with somebody and then you just aren't, because we were in a relationship for 4 years, a little over. And so it's like, you go from living with somebody to, again, not, and then you're just on your own. No, I'm not in trouble, no ties on paperwork or the law or anything. So, I mean, I kind of just like respectfully went into like Jeffrey Lebowski mode and just was, smoking joints all day and drinking vodka. Like that's just, I just didn't care anymore because like I was working at a dispensary. So I was like, dude, I ain't got no girlfriend. Like I'm,
got no one to sit there to regulate you. You have no one sitting there judging you. So you're just like, hey, like I can do me right now.
Yeah, and I was like 25 years old. So like my brain was not in this mature spot to like make a decision as a young man back then to be like, well, you think like drinking every day is like still not good for you? It's like I wasn't like doing, a ton of cocaine or other hallucinogens, but I just stuck to drinking and smoking because it was like liquor store down the street. I don't have to be bothered. I'm kind of in a period right now where I don't really want to hang out with a ton of people. I just kind of want to do my job, maybe go to the bar afterwards and come home. And that sort of like slowly turned into its own nightmare because it was like your tolerance just starts to really go up and up and up. And there's just nights where I would drink what I would think is like the right amount and I would black out and be all over my house and texting and calling people and just making a fool of myself to my adult roommates at the time. They were grown adults that were just like, oh, he's just kind of our wacky drunk roommate, whatever. And then the woman I was living with, her brother like fraudulently put like a check for rent one month. So she kicked him out. And then she moved out because of a situation with her children and her ex-boyfriend or something. So then she had people move in that were like my age. So like, dude, it just turned into, again, this whole thing of like, oh, great. Like now I got people my age that aren't going to like, because we just would drink together and hang out. And like me and my roommates were very cool with each other. But, shout out to my good friend and old roommate, Taylor. She just put up with all of my crap for like a few years because we lived in that house and then another house in Lakewood. And it just was always me drinking too much. You know what I mean? No matter what, it was always just drinking way too much because then in 2018, I got my second DUI. And that one was a little bit more serious because, I was like swerving out of the liquor store parking lot, wasted off my ass, just terrible, driving home. Guy in the liquor store could tell I was wasted. He followed me home while he called the police. And then they were waiting for me at my house. So respectfully, I have nothing else to say other than like, I deserved that. I should not have been drinking and driving like that at all. And I don't recommend it or say that it's something anybody responsibly should do. It's just that the way that I think about it these days is that no matter what, back then I was going to drink. So whether it was driving, working, living, talking, breathing,
you're just centered around the alcohol.
I was just centered around the alcohol because like it made me feel something that I've never felt before, where it's just like, it's true what they tell you to be careful with because like it'll numb you. It'll numb you to all pain and sorrow and things because, I won't get into it too deep, but my first and my second relationship both had incidences of infidelity against me. Like I've never committed that act. And I know that's like, I'm not trying to tunnel Shakespeare over here, but it's just like, it's just a more professional way for me to say it as opposed to other ways I could put it. and just to be respectful to every party involved. But that is a big reason that I drank so much.
You're just trying to numb yourself from the fact. I mean, so I've been cheated on, so I understand that, and I kind of went not to the same level of what you went to, but like I get it. I understand because I numbed myself and went down a very depressed route. Like we haven't even talked about this. So I had my own, and I'm not going to go into too much detail, but I had my own issues with alcohol. I still do drink here and there, but few and far between. And for me, when I was in the military, it was a lot of things. I didn't realize some of the stuff I was dealing with subconsciously, and then some of the relationships that I had gone through, how they affected me. So I started drinking a ton. There's no way to sound cool saying this, by the way. Pre-gaming with Moscato before you go out to, I was living in Germany, like with 2 bottles of Moscato, just me, going out and then doing vodka energy. They call them basically vodka rebels, but in Germany they're vodka energy. And I do probably 10, 12 of those. Now, a difference between me and most people is I didn't get hangovers, so there's no ramifications the next day. So I went down a really weird path with that as well. And I'm not going to go into too much more detail than that, but I understand. I can't relate to your exact story, but I know how that whole somebody cheating on you, how you can just mess with your psyche and you just want to numb yourself the way through.
Well, and I think the worst part about the one that really did it for me, the second one is just that you know, we broke up in 2020 and like in January, and like 2 weeks later, she's with the guy that she cheated on me with. So or like not even, I mean, it was very quick. So it's just like, my value went like out the window. My self-value just went out the window, as well as like, I truly did love this person a lot. Like I had, you know, real feelings for this person. So I think it just hurt 10 times more. And I just allowed it to hurt more. And when it really started to pour in on the wounds, my only medication was vodka, you know, just because there's this like muscle feeling you get, like brain muscle memory. I don't know for me at least, when I would have like a liter and I'd just hit it real hard, like the noise of the liquor, like exiting the bottle and just the bubbles and the like
a weird suction almost coming out. Yeah.
Like just that. No, and just then like pulling it back and like looking at it and being like, I took down that much fun. Like I did that. Like for whatever reason, it's this punishment that ends with like a sort of pleasure. I don't know.
The pride that you're able to.
I don't know. It's I hate to compare it to something like deadlifting, but it's like because it's not, and it never will be. And no, all my friends that deadlift and we deadlift together, I'm not saying that. It's just
disclaimer.
Yeah. Shout out. But it's just like, I don't know. There was just some sort of physical feat in being like, now for a little bit, my pain is gone. Like my suffering is over for a little bit. You know, I don't know. There's a voice in my head that was just like, good douche. Like you just killed that dude. Like good job. Like good job doing that. That must feel great, because I'm sitting there in oblivion after ounces and ounces and ounces of hard liquor. Yeah. Just like, you know, it's just rain. And I'm not like going out on the streets. Yes, I've had DUIs in my life because of the mistakes that I've made drinking and driving. And I'll never say that, but put it this way. I didn't go to the bars to get drunk. I didn't go to people's houses to get drunk. I stayed at my house alone and got drunk.
Which is almost a little more dangerous because you're just sitting there by yourself to your own thoughts.
Yeah. And so it got to the point where I would shift that meter or that needle, whatever you want to call it, into, I probably had every subscription service on the planet for streaming because I just watched movie after TV show, after series, after documentary, after movie, and so on and so forth, to the point where I would just obliterate alcohol and Papa Murphy's Pizza and just like watch endless media until I had to go live my life, like work or other things. And those things started to slip because of my behavior of the half-life of alcohol.
So what changed? Because that's what I'm curious about, because you went down this path. Like, what was the eye-opener for you?
So in 2020, I got my third DUI. In April of 2020, I was like supposed to go to a birthday party in Fort Collins for a friend of mine. And the day before, I had been drinking all day. I think I woke up that day at like, I don't know, maybe like 2 in the afternoon or something. And I had like this much left, like this much left in the bottle. So I just slammed that immediately because I just woke up out of bed and didn't want like the shakes or anything like that, because that's what my stupid little strategy always was. Got a message like, hey, Fort Collins, buddy's birthday, come out. So I was like, all right, cool, lit. So hopped in my car because I was on probation for my second DUI. But this is during COVID. So they weren't doing UAs and they weren't doing in-person visits for probation officers. Because scaling back for just 10 seconds, my second DUI was just so bad, they had to take me to the hospital and I had acidosis of the liver. So like I had to stay there for like 12 hours while they monitored me. And then I got charged and put on probation for 2 years. So by the end of that 2 years, I had gone back to drinking because I had stayed sober for long enough to take all the UAs I needed, do all the drug tests, mouth swab, like all the things that they have you do throughout your probationary period to make sure you're not drinking or doing drugs. So I stayed clear of all that. And then when I got out of this relationship and, it was 2020 and COVID had just hit, I mean, I was just like back into this space of like, okay, well, I feel terrible and this is what I know works and I'm not in trouble and I'm definitely not an alcoholic. So like, why don't we just drink like hard kombucha? I was like, I'll just do that. But then that was just like, okay, well, this next time that I buy a sixer of that, I'll just buy like a couple shooters of vodka just because to pump it up just a little bit. Like, because like I can handle that. I can handle that. Addict brain. And so that eventually just turned back into me drinking hard straight liquor. And so now fast forward to that day, I'm on my way to Fort Collins, definitely have liquor in my system, in my blood, in my body. I'm not, I'm like half hungover and half, I just took 2 shots of booze. And I'm such a seasoned alcoholic at that point that I'm like, I'm not even, whatever. Like, It's not even in me. I'm good. Stupid. I'm on my way to Fort Collins and I'm at a stoplight in Adams County and I get rear-ended. I rear-end somebody else. We're at a stoplight. Cops come. Everybody's in their car, masks on. They're telling me to get out of the car because they got to talk to me. And they can immediately smell sweat and alcohol coming off of me. And they're just, firing away how much have you been drinking today? How much have you, when? All the proverbial questions, blood, breath, or urine. What are you, what's up? And I refuse because at that point I'm like, well, I've already gone through this whole system. So like, I'm just not even going to do a sobriety test for you guys, any of it, because like, I'm kind of drunk and I'm just like, I know it's bullshit. I know the statistics, that. And I'm just being totally irrational. So they arrest me on the spot because a refusal is automatic 1-year license suspension and an automatic DUI. So I already know I'm in a lot of trouble. And so my car's totaled. I'm in the police station. They're like, we'll give you 2 phone calls to have somebody pick you up. Otherwise, I'm taking you to jail. I was like, all right. So first I call my roommate, Taylor, and she is not happy with me one bit because she's already witnessed my 2nd DUI. Now she's hearing I'm getting a 3rd one. So she's just like almost giving up on me as a friend, which I totally respect and understand her at the time being very upset. So no disrespect there. She's like, I'm not doing this. Like, you gotta, like, no.
You gotta figure it out yourself.
Yep. And I'm like, okay, all right. And then I call my other roommate, George, who I've lived with him in 3 different houses for over 4 years. He just moved out of my current house to live with his girlfriend. He's one of my best friends on the planet. And he dropped everything he was doing and came and picked me up and got me out of that situation. So very thankful for that because I didn't have to go back to jail then. But as I was sitting in my lawyer's office a couple days later, giving him another retainer of money I was borrowing from my parents again, so getting even more deep in the debt hole with them and their spiritual debt because they were just so disappointed and so confused of why I was still making these choices and these patternistic behaviors that were just leading down a horrible path. Yet they were still like, we want to help you because we don't want to see you die. It's like, you're our son. So big love to my parents there because, my dad was like, yeah, I just want to see you like get through this and get like better and get help. Like, however that, like, I don't understand what's going on with you, or your mother and I are just confused. So like, help us help you. So I'm in my lawyer's office and I tell him, look, I understand that I'm like facing a lot of, let's just put it frank, a lot of shit here. Like, I'm deep in the hole right now. But like, I need help and I got to go to like rehab. Like, I said that. I was like, I have to go to rehab. How can you get me there? And he was like, well, I can look into it. Like, there's programs that you can go. Like, he's like, you're going to need to go to an inpatient. He's like, it can't be outpatient. He's like, you got to go live there. And I was like, fuck. I was like, I got to go live at He's like, yeah. He's like, dude, do you want to go to prison? was like, no. Because he's like, yeah, because you're facing like 1 to 5 years in prison. He goes, higher on the 5 side. He's like, you'll maybe do 9 months. Like, that's typical, is that they sentence you to, 3 to 5 years and you get out in 9 months, maybe a little more. And I was like, dude, 9 months in prison? He's like, yeah, man, it's your 3rd DUI. He's like, you kidding me? Like, this is a serious crime. It's why they charge people so much for all this. This is why, like, you're in serious trouble. So I was like, all right, yeah, okay, I'll do whatever it takes, because I didn't really think about it. Like, I just didn't quantify it of like, they're really throwing it hard because like you're on probation for your 2nd DUI and this is your 3rd. So like, dude, the ball's in your court. So I automatically just was like, all right, let's do it. So he found a rehab program called Red Rocks Recovery. So shout out to Red Rocks, because I went and lived in their Lakewood men's house for 2 months. And I didn't work. I didn't hang out with homies. I didn't see anybody. Like, you were allowed, but I didn't see anybody. I just like decided to really dive into the therapy that I never knew that I needed so much. Like, I opened up all the cans of worms to just creep and crawl out onto the earth. I really gave everything I had into that therapy because I realized that it was like a life or death situation for me. And if I was going to go spend, X amount of time in prison, that would change me forever.
Hey, everybody. I want to talk to you about something that's changed my fitness routine for the better. That's Pactera Athletics. Finding the right compression shorts shouldn't be a hassle. And that's why I love Pactera Athletics. They made it simple and straightforward. But here's the thing. Pactera doesn't compromise on quality. I've tried tons of shorts, but they just feel different. They last, they're made with top-notch fabrics, and they feel great no matter your workout. Now, I'm a thick guy with thick thighs, so it's very hard for me to find compression shorts that work. And these ones, they let me breathe and still succeed in my workouts. So whether I'm hitting the gym or exploring outdoors, these compression shorts and leggings deliver an unparalleled comfort and support. Are you ready to upgrade your workout? Head to PacteraAthletics.com and use my special code EverydayElevations10 for a discount.
Yeah, you would never come out the same person. Never. Yeah.
Yeah.
Couldn't even imagine who you'd be if you went to prison there.
Right. And so that was my initial like scared thought, just like anybody would, And like, I was preparing myself for them to even send me there anyway. But what ended up happening is the judge saw it as this guy is like actually cleaning up his act, because we see the reports coming in from rehab, from your therapists, and from your house managers and mentors at this rehab, and it's looking pretty good. So I ended up getting sentenced to 2 months in Adams County Jail, as opposed to the 1 to 5 year sentence. That's what I got knocked down to. And then my probation was revoked and reinstated. So the 2 years I had spent on probation just were whatever, because I just started over right then and there, because it's revoke and reinstate. So it's very black and white of termination off of that probation, starting the new one in 2 different counties at the same time. So I was in probation in Adams County and in Jefferson County. And then after a year, I was just on probation in Adams County. And then that was another 2 years. So 3 years total, five in the long run of things. And then I just got off on July 31st this year because they just opened the jail up this year back to nonviolent criminals. So I had to go spend June and July, the whole entire 30 and 30, in Adams County jail. Because I was supposed to do work release, but partial court mess up, partial my mess up on my turn-in date and them having things available. So they labeled me as a failure to appear at court, and they put out a warrant for my arrest. So by the time I came in and turned myself in for work release, there was already a warrant for my arrest. So they arrested me on the spot and put me in jail for 60 days straight. Mm. So then that's what happened this summer, is that I already knew I was going to get off probation at some point this year in 2023, but I just didn't know how, because like there was so much that they were just tennis courting back and forth with me of like, oh, it's this, and oh, this isn't open, and oh, this date, and this, and come turn yourself in now, or don't turn it, oh, and we're not ready for you. And I just got confused. And so when it finally came down to it and they arrested me, told me there was a warrant, told me I'm just going to do the 60 days, I kind of was just like, all right, like, okay, you know, I mean, I can't leave, so it's whatever. But respectfully lost both the jobs that I was working at. It wasn't a hard fire. It was just, I was on the phone with them one day and told them when I was going to get out. And they were like, well, we have to respectfully replace you. So, but yeah, like big shout out to my friend Kelly, Mike's girlfriend that you might've met today. 'Cause I worked for her and she was the most understanding, the most supportive, the most kind-hearted, and just the most loving person you could ever ask for in a situation like that. And the people over at Archipelago were really nice about it too, because I'm still connected with Archipelago, as well as Kelly and I are still friends. So very thankful for that. But to quote unquote answer your question, that is all the things that the spiral, the snowball effect of when things really started to change for me, but it really was going to be more of a process than I could have ever imagined, because once I got sober from like hard drugs and alcohol, there still was more work to be done. There always is more work to be done. But even in this case, like double down, triple down, because I had to go back almost 16 years of when I started using drugs and alcohol to like meet up spiritually with my teenager self to talk through all the times that had happened up until then, because I really had to like catch up with being 29 at that time, because I'm almost 33 now. And so I quit drinking on September 13th of 2020. It's my dad's birthday, but it also just happens to be my sober date, because it's the day I got picked up for rehab, and everything just really started to actually change. Because about 2 weeks into rehab, I realized, oh, dude, this is exactly where I need to be. I should be here. You know, like I had gone so much all over the place that I understood. I was like, yeah, you went on such a roller coaster ride, buddy, that like you're now at this stop. Like you went that hard. So I just started like opening myself up to the guys that I was living with, and my house managers and my therapists. And because those people are professionally paid as well as trained, more trained, I'm not saying like professionally, they're not weighed in because they're paid, but their profession is to listen and help you. So them being professionals is exactly what I needed. I didn't need other addicts or other people that had gone through that process without the process I was doing to like preach to me about what I should be doing. My friend Mark Murphy is a musician in a band called Wookiefoot, and he has a song called, Should on Me. And it's basically like, don't should on me and I'm not going to should on you, And like, it's a good message I always tell people of like shoulding, it's like a verb. But yeah, just don't tell people what to do because you're going to preach a wrong way unless you're a professional or someone who is living in the house with other addicts trying to help them on their journey, So I always got the best advice from people I was in the program with because unlike somebody on the outside that you just meet that's like sober and like telling you, oh, you got to do this and that, it just felt more like we were all on the same journey together, learning how to accept our realities and how to spin that into a better tomorrow.
Yeah, you're able to relate to them more because they're in the same boat you're in right now.
Exactly, as opposed to, well, yeah, I get it. You got sober 15 years ago, dude, but like that doesn't help me. Like it does, but it helps me more now that I've been sober for 3 years. And mind you, I say the word sober, but I mean, THC and CBD are what the number one things that help me curb my alcohol addiction and like help with coming off being sick and like all these other things. But like I didn't smoke weed or do anything in rehab. It's just what I personally like to do nowadays because I've never had an issue with marijuana and it's something that I advocate for it helping me before I drank. Because that was what I did before. I tried marijuana way before I drank alcohol. And even in now, since my current life, it's always been a tool to help me versus hurt me. So like these days, living in Colorado where it's legal and I partake is something I do. But it's not something that I ever say, like, I'm not 100% sober, but sober from alcohol, sober from hard drugs, sober from designer substances. Plus, these days, it's got to be so scary being a kid in high school or college during the fentanyl epidemic where there's just not even, like, I hate to say it, but I was listening to a podcast the other day where people were like, between X and Y were the years that you could actually, or decades, that you could just like be a kid and experiment with drugs and alcohol, and it's not going to be laced with fentanyl. But now it's...
Yeah, you never know what you get.
I had a buddy in Minneapolis eat some mushrooms that were laced with fentanyl, and he died.
Oh, dude,
you know what I mean? It's mushrooms. He was just having a mushroom journey, and because they were laced with fentanyl, he passed away. And I know too many people, too, in the like jam band, live music, whatever scene, that other drugs and alcohol and weed just don't do it for them anymore. So they end up getting into fentanyl. They get into smoking blues, and it's like the pill on the foil and all that stuff. So it's like I've watched 2 people in the last 8 months die from just their own fentanyl use because it's gotten that bad to be a household drug that normal people convince other normal people to do this horrendous drug. And so it's such a strong high. You just get addicted to doing that all the time. And then one day you do too much. And it's 100 times more powerful than heroin. So Yeah.
I did not know
Yeah,
that.
fentanyl that's the problem, is that you can't even find heroin anymore because fentanyl has taken over the streets to the point where it's stronger than heroin. So people are going to do it regardless. Whether it's going to kill you or not, no one thinks about that. So I'm just thankful to be on the other side of things where like I'm able to talk to people if they know people who are struggling or things like that, because no, I don't get in my car and just drive right to people and try to save them on the spot. But I'm always down to talk to people about addictions and problems that can happen with that. Or if they know somebody or if they're dealing with issues, that's...
You're a soundboard for people now because you went through it, so you understand a little more of where they're at in their current journey, and you provide something that other people can't. Maybe because you went through what you went through, that they'll actually listen to you, and it might be a wake-up call. So that's kind of cool. You turned it into a way to help people.
Yeah, I mean, because like I know so many of my friends or friends of friends or friends, siblings, whatever, in the last 3 years that have gotten DUIs. 1 in 5 people have at least one.
I'm sure, let's be real, most of us probably should have had a DUI, especially in our age group, going through it, because we just happened to not get pulled over that time.
Mm-hmm.
I guarantee there's times where I drove drunk, and where if I had gotten pulled over, I will not drive anymore if I have a sip of alcohol. But
yeah,
younger me, Superman, invincible,
of course,
blah blah blah, would have had a couple drinks, maybe more than a couple drinks, and I'm just in the neighborhood, I only got to drive 2 blocks.
Yep.
Well, that's happened.
Exactly. And that's the thing, is that I look at it as like, if I can just at least help one person, that helps me, because you're right. I think that there's a stigma against people who haven't ever had a DUI, or maybe one, versus like when it turns into like more than 2, because then people are like, oh, well, like they just label and will go to different excuses, versus you must have had like a pretty bad problem, or like, did something happen, or like, are you okay? And I just found it interesting because it's like, there's different levels of the judgment of like, I had gone through periods where like people who were like really drunk telling me that like I was a problem, when it's like, well, what are you doing with your life? Like, I'm not sitting here judging you. I guess I was just open with the wrong person, which I totally get it. Like you don't just like go spreading the story I don't just go up to people and like, oh, hi, I'm Brian, I'm an alcoholic, or I'm a former drinker, or like, hi, I've had 3 DUIs. I don't do that, but like, it comes up because the deeper you get to know me, not necessarily with our group of friends, because of the fact that we are more centered around doing activities that involve 0 drinking and more physical, mental, those types of things. And that's what we like to do now. We've kind of created a little family of people doing that kind of thing. But, I mean, it's not every day that you are going to ask someone to go and do a run or a hike or working out or whatever. So it's just different nowadays, because I don't surround myself with people who go to bars or do any of that stuff. But like, I just think that there's a time in life where everybody goes to the bars, you drink a bunch, and that period of life is just over for me now. But I don't look at it again as like I'm missing anything now, and I've already done all of that stuff then. So that's how I look at it, just because I'm not really on a mission to help people, but I am there to like make people realize that it still is something that a lot of people deal with, as far as like alcoholism, addiction. And there's not really any room to like judge people unless you really know what's going on. And it just goes back to what I was saying before of like, there are people who drink and drive all the time, but will scold you because you've gotten DUIs.
You got caught.
Because you got caught. So like, that's what I'm saying, is at the end of the day, those people will always be there. And I'm just willing to be more honest with people, where it's like, again, our friend group doesn't really do this, but somebody be like, hey, you want to go to the bar? And you're like, oh, I don't really drink. And then they're like, oh, why? Well, listen to this podcast. It's like, that's, you know what I mean? It's just, or how much time do you have? Because like, I usually just tell people, look, I used to, and I just don't anymore. It doesn't serve me. That's what I was like, alcohol just doesn't really serve me anymore, but thank you so much for your invitation. It's just because the more and more I surround myself with people like yourself and Bobby and Mike and Eric and all of our homies, I just feel better, because you are what you eat socially. I say that all the time. It's just the same thing as if you are reflecting the diet you choose to partake in, your body composition, or whatever it may be. It's the same thing socially, because who you're around the most, you're socially eating that conversation, and that dictates a lot of your choices and the way you live your life. So like, if you're going to be out every single weekend with the Rowdy Town boys, well, you're going to go rowdy all the time. Like, it's going to get to a point where either if you're not bashing heads and drinking beers, you're not really a part of the crew. So if then, for example, on a Saturday, you do a full circle event like we did today, that was our choice to all get together, all 55 of us, and do that. So I think that's pretty cool, because choosing to do these, physical activities with people is fun, because suffering is type 2. Like, it wasn't that fun today to be like lightheaded or, crushing, working it out. But I felt so good afterwards, and we had the supplements and the people and everything else to take care of you before and after. So it's pretty cool.
Hey, everybody. I want to talk to you about something that's changed my fitness routine for the better. That's Pactera Athletics. Finding the right compression shorts shouldn't be a hassle. And that's why I love Pactera Athletics. They made it simple and straightforward. But here's the thing. Pactera doesn't compromise on quality. I've tried tons of shorts, but these, they just feel different. They last, they're made with top-notch fabrics, and they feel great no matter your workout. Now, I'm a thick guy with thick thighs, so it's very hard for me to find compression shorts that work. And these ones, they let me breathe and still succeed in my workouts. So whether I'm hitting the gym or exploring outdoors, these compression shorts and leggings deliver an unparalleled comfort and support. Are you ready to upgrade your workout? Head to PacteraAthletics.com and use my special code EverydayElevations10 for a discount.
I think that was like the most fun for today. And this is, of course, a tangent, but I don't think there's been a single one of those workouts where I'm like, oh boy, I love that. I mean, again, you know this, I'm on my health and wellness journey. I'm not where I want to be health-wise, but I'm getting there.
Me too.
And I think a lot of us are in that same case. It's funny you mentioned Bobby, because I'm like Bobby where Bobby was 2 years ago.
Sure.
And we talk about it all the time. And it's just funny to me because we do these exercises, we kick the crap out of ourselves. And afterwards, you just feel so much better after. And we're not doing all these other things like drinking or anything like that. We focus on the positive things and building those relationships. That's what I love about the group, is just that we really do try and make everything social.
Oh yeah, trust me, because I know plenty of like lifting, running, athletic groups that get beers afterwards or whatever. They get beers together. You know, there's a lot of people who I know that are quote unquote very fit that they still drink. And that's not, I mean, that is not what this whole thing is about.
Yeah, of course.
What it really is about is bringing to surface an awareness that you could be just like me, where you come from a great family, good opportunities, great structure, values, and still fall into addictions and bad choices that, you know, really turn into other things that, like, I got into, you know, because once I entered that system, you know, it took me 5 years to get out of being in it, out of it, in it, all over the place.
Which is crazy because, like, 5 years doesn't sound like much, and then it sounds like so much all at the same time.
It's half a decade.
Yeah.
You know, it's like I changed exponentially from the 2 months at age 29 that I was in rehab, that when I got out and I turned 30 a couple months later, because it was from September to November, and then, you know, the fall just goes by so quick, and Christmas, and then boom, January 12th is my birthday, right after the new year. So it's like, and so it's wild because I turned 30 that year, and there was so much of this like rebirth of human. Like I just went, it was like the phoenix rising from the ashes, you know, like I truly went through that much change. I like burned my old self and like came anew. And that's when the things started, almost up until now is where we're at, because at age 30, that first year of being sober, I learned who I was as a real person, like what I was without the alcohol, who I was like to a core as me.
Yeah, your authentic self.
Exactly. 31, I was like, okay, well, now I know how I feel, my emotions. I know who I am, like mentally up here. Now let's focus on the nutrition, the gut, the insides, the organs, the cells, the blood health. So that's when I started geeking out on all of the like nutrition stuff, and I became a butcher, and then learned that skill trait to an extent. I still have so much to learn. Shout out to my boy Griffin, who will eventually teach me things as time goes on. But, you know, I wanted to learn the whole animal system. The meat I got you tonight from the butcher shop that I used to work at, like, I just wanted to learn all the different cuts, why animals taste different at different times of the year because of the grass that they're eating or the food that they're eating. It just interested me. So I went down that whole pasture-raised path of produce and meat and learned a lot. And so now I'm trying to apply that with other people in helping And that kind of pairs with the no drinking, because it's like not none at all, but I just tell people kind of like the Huberman rule, where it's like, if you want to drink like twice a week, like one drink, that's probably going to be like a biomarker you can work with. But if you're drinking 3 or 4 times a week or more, you're never going to see that many results with working out and eating right, unless you're like measuring out tequila by the ounce on ice with nothing but like a lime. And because liquor is calories, no matter what.
Yeah.
Like even hard liquor, if you take like 5 shots in a night or whatever, like even 3, I mean, you're talking about hundreds of calories. So it's just like beer, even worse, and everything else. So it kind of becomes this one of these things with people's conversations where they just start either substituting or like finding ways to drink less and eat better and drink more supplemental vitamins, drinks that you and I are more familiar with, the Organifi stuff. It's like all the powders from Organifi, as well as Bubs and all the companies we work with, such great alternatives to make mocktails and other things with that are fun, and you can still drink physically with people. It just doesn't have to be alcoholic.
You don't have to get inebriated. Like you can actually be fully present in the moment and still have that social aspect of the alcohol. So.
Absolutely. And like I said, it's not for everybody, and I don't advocate for anything but myself, but like I smoke marijuana in social settings or go to social settings. I smoked a joint before this podcast. It's like, I like the way that I live my life. And if you live your life a way, so be it. I'm still going out there and going to the gym 3 times a week. I'm rucking with my dog every walk that we go on. I drink over a gallon of water a day. I have our friend Tyler developing a nutrition full meal plan for me. So I just don't really look at it as it's not something that hinders me. So I just keep moving on with my life. Now, if it was like in the way of things or not helping me or hurting me, I'd take it out of the equation. And I did find that with different designer and other substances that I tried to still keep around when I got sober from alcohol. But when you're drunk, your inhibitions are lowered and your decision making kind of goes out the window.
Oh, yeah.
Those are like my dad's words to a T. My dad was always drilling it into me. Yeah, well, alcohol's, it's fun, but like there gets to be a point where you lower your inhibitions and your decision making goes out the window and you just start, making the wrong choices. And that's what I don't like about alcohol. And then for him, he was always like, marijuana is like chocolate. If it's around, I'm going to eat it. So he's like, when I was in college, I just realized that when I would smoke, I just didn't really do anything. I wasn't as active, but I am. I'm very active when I do my activities. So pish posh. The whole thing is just that at the end of the day, I want people to feel their most optimal. I want to feel optimal. I'm trying to feel my most optimal and find the balance of what my most optimal self is. Like the company that was with us today that was next to us, that like, I don't know what the name of that, we'll find it in a little bit, but that post-workout stuff was amazing.
Yeah.
It was fantastic because it was like methylated vitamins that are proven to do their job and do it well. So it's like, I'm trying to feel like that all the time. I'm trying to make my best day ever, every day. So like, that's why I've just slowly but surely this year, being the year that I knew I was going to get off probation and like set myself up again for life, to like really start investing in the tools and the supplements that are going to help me do that. So like I bought 2 ice barrels. They come here, I think, next week. Sauna is coming in about 5 months. So I'm going to get that from Sisu. Shout out to them. And, you know, that's how I look at it, is that I'm going to start having you over to sauna all the time and other people, because I want to have a regular crew of people that want to do it. And yeah, I mean, that's how when I saw Eric Hinman's vision of what he did for our 1-day retreat last year, I was sold on just doing that with my friends. Waking up, having breakfast and coffee, hitting a workout, whatever it is. It doesn't have to be anything crazy. Go out in some nature, then go back to the house, sauna, cold plunge, cook up some steaks, some burgers, some portobello mushrooms, if that's your jive, sides, and just enjoy community and company with people who are honestly on the same page as me as back as when I was drinking, because I was having a blast with my friends that we were all drinking together. You know, when you got your good drinking buddies and like everyone's hanging out and having a good time.
Yeah, it's just a different community.
11 out of 10, fun. But that's what I'm now trying to do with the health and wellness stuff. It's like I told you before we started, it's almost like the Steve-O mentality of like, you party so hard, you become a terrible professional at partying, but then you get sober and you put the same effort into partying as sobriety, as well as your version of sobriety or what that means to you. Or, you know, plenty of people, for them, it's just not doing the drug or the drink that got them in the most deep situation. It's like you said, you know, you don't really drink a ton, but every now and again, every blue moon, you'll have some drinks with Lisa or whoever is going to join you.
Yeah.
But like, respect, because you found that balance, and I found that balance, and other people, to the point where I want to be around like-minded folk that are taking care of themselves, to the point where I wouldn't invite somebody over to sauna and cold plunge who just had a 3-day bender, because they would probably be like, no, dude, I don't want to do that at all. Like, that sounds horrible. But it's just communities. It's all
building your own tribe.
Exactly. My friend John is in a band called John Wayne and the Pain, and they have a song called "Your Vibe Attracts Your Tribe." So it's like, I live by those words all the time. Like, your vibe does attract your tribe, and the way you put yourself in the world are going to magnet those people towards you. So like, be a good example for yourself to represent for your community.
Yeah, I like it. Well, we're getting a little towards the end here, so I would like to end with just a couple questions.
Of course, please.
So one of my favorite ones is, if you can have any superpower, what would it be?
I would have a magic, like, I don't even know. I guess that's not, that's more towards like a wish. So if I had any superpower, mine would probably be kind of like what Nightcrawler has, where he can like travel through wall.
Okay, it's teleportation.
Yeah, it's like being able to like travel very far quickly and like not have repercussions for it would be so sick, because you could go and do something in another state with somebody and then come back the same day without flight or anything. So if I could like teleport far distances, that'd be so awesome.
Yeah, we just do a full circle event at like Mountain in Nepal or something.
Exactly,
Yeah.
and then just go back to Colorado in the same day.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's actually the power that I normally pick. So it's funny because there's always different answers for it. So I like the fact that finally somebody picked the same powers.
Or like going to the grocery store, that'd be so convenient.
True.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, it's kind of like the Robot Chicken where there's the supervillains and the superheroes all stuck in traffic on their way to work, like as if they all work at an office together. And it's just like Lex Luthor just being like, forget this, I'm teleporting. I have a teleportation device. And they're like, we know, and yet you still carpool with us. So it's so funny. It just the convenience of being like, I'm going to do normal stuff with my teleporting.
Yeah, that's fair. See, there's so many places.
Because you wouldn't have a car.
Yeah, you wouldn't need it. Yeah.
You wouldn't need it.
You can live in New York then.
Hey.
Last question. What is your favorite quote or even a quote that you'd like to live by now? Kind of like 2 questions in one. So you can answer either one or both.
I would say that a quote that I'm living by a lot of the time is I'm trying to think of it exactly, like the exact wording of it, but it basically sums up that. So it's said by Wayne Gretzky, and the best way to put it is you miss 100% of the shots you don't take.
Yeah, I think that's actually pretty much like the straight up.
Right, exactly. So it's for me, that's the best way I can live my life, because I lived in so much fear as an alcoholic, even of just like, well, yeah, that's not working out because of this. And of course it's not, like, never going to do that. And like, of course I'm a drinker because like, this is what I chose to do, is pass, it's like, I always like had this very weird inner monologue of like telling myself that I'm just going to be reduced to a very like 1 out of 10 living because I've just chosen alcohol over anything. So like, why do this when you can drink? Why do that when you can just go home and drink alcohol? Like, it's a better choice than taking that risk. Whatever. But now it's like, I realize that I'll miss an opportunity if I don't just take it. And there are some where you can't just be a yes man to everything.
Yeah.
But like, when I see something and I feel it in my gut, I go ahead and go for it.
Nice. I like it, man. Oh, dude, I am so happy to finally get you on here.
Dude, I'm so happy to finally do this. Yeah, trust me.
I know. I was supposed to be your first.
I know, but it technically is now better this way because I got the kind of the first, first taste around, and I said things that were different here tonight than for the other ones. So that's kind of what I'm trying to do with other podcasts too, is like give people this, not the same story, but like versions of it so they can learn from their own way because of the relationship we have. I think it's helpful for other people to hear my story, but almost like a good jam band or stand-up comedian. I'm not going to tell the same jokes or play the same songs.
Yeah, that's fair. I like it, man.
Some of them, play some of the hits, but I always have to tell the core parts and then mix in other stuff too.
Yeah, it makes sense, man. All right, dude. Well, I appreciate it.
Yeah, dude.
Thank you so much for tuning in today. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with a friend, leave us a review, and don't forget to follow us on social media for the latest updates and behind the scenes content.